Right.
So what does it feel like to tow this thing?
It's like towing a house and a parachute at the same time. Everybody always asks, they say, it looks kind of heavy. How is it to tow? And it's actually harder than you might think. It's only a 28-foot trailer, but we've had the comparison of this versus a 28-foot travel trailer that we rented, so very apples to apples. The 28-foot travel trailer I think it was about 8,500 pounds unloaded. So you get some stuff in it and some water, maybe it tops out 10,000 pounds. The tiny house, on the other hand, is 15,000 pounds unloaded. You get all of our belongings in it and a bunch of water, and it tops out around 20,000 pounds. So it's twice the amount of weight. The height of the thing and the front profile are very different, so you get a ton of wind resistance. Literally, just hundreds and hundreds of pounds of wind resistance pulling the truck back. The thing is, we bought a 2020 Silverado 3500 to tow it, and
Not sponsored.
not sponsored, no. But the thing was, I had a 2015 model, and it had a few things that were a little bit different. It had a little bit less beefy frame. The wheelbase was a little bit shorter. They changed a lot of things. They gave the new one a lot more horsepower. It's got a 10-speed transmission. And I really wouldn't recommend anything less than this or something equivalent to it for towing a tiny house like that. The only thing we're missing right now for really good setup is a weight distributing hitch. The thing I learned with a tiny house was it doesn't like 10% on the tongue weight. Usually trailers are okay with 10 to 15%. It actually likes closer to like 13, 14, 15% ideally. And that puts, with a 20,000 pound trailer, you're talking about like 3,000 pounds of tongue weight. So you need a weight distributing hitch because it's only rated for 2,000 pounds of tongue weight. You get so much weight on the back end and it starts to pogo, especially over rough roads, and doesn't ride very well. And it starts to compromise the stability of the truck. So you get the heavy tongue weight on the trailer gets more stable, but then the truck gets less stable. So we have to balance things very carefully right now to keep the whole rig stable. Once we get the weight distributing hitch, I think it should clear up all those issues, and it should be a lot less sensitive to the balance, fortunately. But to give you an idea how hard it is to pull, we've been averaging through the mountains and the plains of West Texas and everywhere else about in the high 5 mile to the gallon range. So you're talking about like 5.7, 5.9 miles to the gallon towing this thing. The diesel engine uses a lot of diesel exhaust fluid, which is an anti-pollutant because it's under such a heavy load. So you have to refill that every 1,000 miles. We have a 90-gallon tank in the back, which is absolutely necessary when you're getting that kind of mileage, because you go out west and it's sometimes difficult to get such a big rig into some of these smaller gas stations, and they tend to be spaced very far apart. So it's very important to carry, the 90 gallons of extra fuel on board.
So how much does it cost to fill up the 90-gallon tank in the truck each time?
Well, you got to think the main tank, you can get about 30 gallons in it, and then you can get 90 gallons in the auxiliary tank. So that's 120 gallons. Texas, Houston prices, you're talking about $240. Out here in Arizona, New Mexico, it's a little more expensive. You're talking about $300 to fill it up. And it's kind of funny, people are like, oh my God, that's a lot of money for gas. But we've also done trips where we've stayed in hotels, and it's like each time you stay in a hotel, how you have the taxes and everything. It can cost just as much or more than per night than it costs per day of driving this thing. So we actually spend less per day driving than we would spend on a hotel typically, especially to the remote areas we go to, where they tend to charge a premium for any kind of services.
Plus we save on food.
We save a lot on food. We literally haven't eaten out on this whole trip. We've been on the trip 10 days, and you've packed almost enough food to last we're actually like 13 days now.
Yeah.
But you packed almost enough food to last the 2 weeks that we've been out so far, and so it's just like being at home. You know, you just cook and you have your dishwasher, everything else ready. So it's not only convenient, but it's really cost effective. Also, you know, during the rest of the year when we're not traveling, remember, we're not towing this thing every day. We're not using 100 gallons of fuel every day. Most of the time, it's just sitting there in Seabrook, and we're using a scant amount of energy. So throughout the year, even including these trips where we tow it, you know, it kind of levels out, and you don't really use that much energy. It's comparable to like a smaller American home, if you put it that way. Even though when we do tow it, it uses a prodigious amount of fuel.